Good evening, everyone. This is Practically Writing, episode 6. Can you believe we've already gotten that far? Today we're going to be talking about pen names. We're going to be talking a little bit about why you would choose a pen name, the pros and cons about them, and how to select one. So let's get started. One of the biggest pros is anonymity. A lot of authors prefer to stay out of the spotlight. Really, this is kind of an interesting reason to choose a pen name because a lot of authors would be thrilled if somebody knew who they were. However, there can be other reasons for anonymity than, you're afraid of being too famous. And some of them can be quite serious, including if you write on LGBTQ issues, then you might become a target. If you have an abusive ex, then they might be able to find you. Also, people who write about rather controversial topics, they get some pushback from friends and family or their day job if it's known that they write that kind of material. So that can be a huge consideration for people who are writing things that are a little less mainstream and could be considered controversial. The second pro is that it makes it easier for you to cross genres. Now, some genres are pretty easy to cross with the same name. If you're going with fantasy and you cross into horror, people aren't going to blink too much. In fact, that's pretty common. But if you write children's books and you would like to cross over into erotica, that can get really tricky. Now, obviously, that's an extreme example, but it's not as uncommon as you would think. It's very important to keep things that are that diverse very separate from each other. And a pen name is a really easy way to do that. People tend to look for the author name for more books like that. You certainly don't want children to pop up your alien orcish fantasy erotica. Oh my. And the final pro is something that's rather sad, but it's there, so. And that is that you're the wrong gender. No, I'm not talking about being a trans person. I'm talking about men writing in the romance field, although that is becoming much more popular and acceptable. However, if you're a female writing in pretty much any other genre, it can be tricky. There have been a lot of instances where it has been proven that a woman is less likely to get published, to be considered by an agent or publisher, simply because she's a woman. By taking on a name that is more masculine or gender neutral, you can get around that. So if you find it difficult to break into the publishing industry as a woman, then that may be something to consider. I don't. I'm like, Sarah. Now the cons of choosing a pen name. The first con is that it can be much harder to find you as an author. It's harder to network and things like that because a lot of social media, you have to choose a single name, and either because it's part of the requirements or because we like for our friends to be able to find us, we tend to choose our real names or a very common handle or something similar to that. By choosing a pen name, it can make it more difficult for our fans who only know us by our author name to find us. Because of this, it can also be harder to find other books. Now, this is most common when we are crossing genres and writing with a different pen name or name in each genre. So it can make it more difficult for somebody who likes paranormal romance to find your horror thrillers. I just make up genres. Just make them up. There are some things that you can do to mitigate that. And one of the things that I do is I am not very shy about letting people know when I'm writing under a pen name. And so there's a lot of information out there to connect my real name to my pen names. And the last thing is it can make things more complicated when you sign contracts because you are going to be doing most of your communication under your real name, and then getting it clear that you would like to have your copyright and bylines under a different name. It can sometimes be a little tricky, and once in a while you also end up with royalty checks for a person who does not exist because it's your pen name. And it can be kind of interesting to try and recover the money for that if your bank is pretty hardcore about you cashing somebody else's check. Selecting a pen name is a relatively unique opportunity for you. You get to choose a name that is genre appropriate. Sarah Berman is kind of a generic name, so it works across multiple genres. My other pen names are chosen specifically because they fit very well with what is expected from somebody who is an expert in that genre. For example, I write a lot of nonfiction for the pegging community. I write under the handle Kali Sarah. It's a handle that I've used quite a bit over the past 10 years, so a lot of people already knew me under that handle, but the fact that it is something that combines a god name, the goddess Kali, with my own name in a rather unique format is something that is expected from the pagan community. Other examples are Silver Ravenwolf, Starhawk. Those are some of the other big names. Now, for my erotica, I went with a different direction. I have this name that I've kind of been entranced with since high school. I'm sure most of you have, had the same kind of thing where there's just like this one, almost a persona that you kind of wish that you had and had the perfect name and everything. I created several variations of this name for various reasons, primarily regarding writing and things like that. But one of the incarnations of this name is Lena Grace, and it's spelled Greyce. And as soon as I thought of having a pen name for my erotica, I knew that that was the name that I needed to pick. It was very me. It's something that I've been toying with on and off for decades now. But it's also an erotica type of name. It's very feminine. It's very florally. It makes you think of little curly cues. That's the kind of name that you can easily see in one of the pretty fonts. That seems a little stereotypical, but there's a certain persona that you put on as an author for the various genres that you write. It's part of the marketing game, really. People don't want to hear that their favorite horror writer is afraid of the dark. You kind of put on these, not really acts, but there are certain aspects of yourself that you promote over others. Lena Grace is my feminine side. She's my curly Q side. That's why I chose that name. So when you pick a pen name, particularly if it's due to genre considerations, then you'll want to consider something that is very fitting for that genre. Another thing that people like to do when picking pen names is to go with a variation of their own name. For example, maybe the initials of your first name and your maiden name, and then your last name as the last name, or the initials of your first name and your married name, and then your maiden name is the last name, or using your middle name instead of your first name or instead of your last name. There are a lot of different ways that people have done things like that, and it's very effective. You can do that in a way that fits with the presentation that you're trying to make. The third thing that you want to consider is the number of pen names that you have. I have 3 pen names, and then I write under my regular name, and then I also write under my regular name with my first and middle initials. This is a lot, and I do it for very specific reasons. The stuff that I write with my first and second initials tends to be more business stuff. Things that are nonfiction, things that are self-help, that kind of stuff. The things that I write under my regular name are the genres that I really want to focus on. They're the ones that I'm going to be publishing the most in. The other 3 are chosen specifically because of the genres that I'm writing in, which is children's, pagan nonfiction, and erotica. Those are genres that tend to be a little less forgiving if you expand into other genres, or in the case of erotica, they tend to be genres that people are more concerned about avoiding. I don't know why. Not everybody likes erotica. So those are some things to consider. I wouldn't recommend going for more than 3 pen names outside of variations on your own name, and even then, that's a lot to keep track of. Really, the main reason that I've done it is because I've established a persona in the pagan community that I was wanting to tap into, and also because I really never want there to be any confusion in my children's books and my erotica books. They should never meet. That's why I did that, and that's simply a reflection of the sheer amount of variety that I've been writing over the years. So if you have that kind of variety, then by all means, make sure you have the pen names that you need in order to keep the separations that you need. But if you're writing mostly in 1 or 2 genres, it might be your best bet to stick with only 1 or 2 pen names. And even then, really consider whether or not a pen name is necessary. And make sure you pick something awesome. There is a situation in which it is very likely you will need to choose a pen name or at least a unique variation on your own name. And that's if there is somebody else of renown who has the same name that you do. This can be another author, this can be an actor, this could be a serial killer. You don't want to be confused with another person, particularly if what they are known for isn't exactly in line with what you want to be known for. Additionally, it makes it more difficult for you to be found, because when your fans go to Google your name, they'll come up with somebody else. So you want your name to be relatively unique in that way. If you share a name with, say, Scarlett Johansson, that may be a positive association, but they're never going to find you. Just like the victims of the serial killer. I think that's all for this week. If you have any questions about this subject or anything else, go ahead and leave them below. Don't forget to thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, check out all of my pages. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and my website. Be sure to check out Too Wyrd, available on Amazon in paperback or ebook. And go ahead and take a look at my Patreon account. You don't have to donate, just look. Not everybody likes the alien, orcish, paranormal romance. Woohoo! Equality of the sexes! I am woman, hear me roar. It is like the dinosaur.